The woman in apartment 404 moved in during the middle of a thunderstorm. Nobody in the building saw her arrive. No moving truck, no furniture delivery, no friends helping carry boxes. Just the sound of heels echoing through the hallway at 2:13 in the morning. And by sunrise, apartment 404 was fully furnished. The tenants whispered about her immediately. The old woman in 302 swore she saw antique swords hanging on the walls through the open doorway. The university student in 501 claimed the lights inside her apartment glowed red at night. But the strangest rumor came from the landlord himself, because according to the paperwork, the woman technically didn't exist. No passport, no national ID, no bank history, only one name written across every document: Emily Nacht. And even that name felt fake. Apartment 405 belonged to Daniel Reyes. Quiet, polite, worked remotely, always home before sunset, the perfect neighbor. At least, that's what everyone believed. Nobody knew Daniel once commanded an entire military division during the Pacific Gate Wars. Nobody knew he was called the Hero of Manila. Years ago, monsters had emerged from dimensional gates across the world. Countries collapsed overnight. Governments formed alliances, and wars began over magical resources pulled from the gates. The Philippines stood with the Pacific Coalition. Meanwhile, Australia led the Southern Dominion, and at the center of the Dominion's armies stood a woman feared across the entire world, the Crimson Witch, Emily Nacht, the Villainess of Perth. Thousands died during her campaigns. Entire battalions vanished whenever her crimson magic appeared on the battlefield. Children in evacuation shelters used to whisper her name like a ghost story. And Daniel Reyes had spent 7 years trying to kill her. The first time they met, it was over spilled coffee. Daniel exited the elevator holding grocery bags when the woman from 404 stepped inside. Black coat, silver earrings, long crimson hair tied loosely behind her shoulders. The elevator lights flickered the moment she entered. Daniel froze instantly, not because he recognized her face, but because his body remembered her magic. Veterans of the Gate Wars often described it the same way, like standing too close to lightning. Emily glanced at him briefly before looking away. Then the elevator jolted violently. Coffee splashed across Daniel's shirt. "Oh," she said softly, "that was probably my fault." Daniel stared. She sounded normal, not like the monster from wartime broadcasts, not like the woman soldiers feared, just tired, very tired. "I can pay for the shirt," she offered. "You don't have to." The elevator doors opened. For 1 second, Daniel noticed strange crimson symbols glowing faintly beneath her sleeves. War markings, real ones. His stomach dropped, because only one person in history carried those symbols, the Crimson Witch herself, and she was living next door. Daniel didn't sleep that night. Rain hammered against the apartment windows while old memories clawed their way back into his mind. Burning coastlines, collapsing gates, Australian Dominion soldiers marching through shattered cities, and Emily Nacht standing atop ruined buildings surrounded by crimson fire. The war officially ended 3 years ago. Peace treaties were signed. Gate technology was regulated. The surviving nations rebuilt together. But veterans knew the truth. The hatred never disappeared. It only became quieter. At 3:17 a.m., Daniel heard footsteps outside his apartment. Slow, measured, then silence. He reached beneath his bed. Still there, the sword, wrapped carefully in cloth after all these years, the same blade used to kill gate beasts during the siege of Jakarta. His hand tightened around the handle. Then, a knock. 3 soft taps against the door. Daniel opened it cautiously. Emily stood there holding a plate of pastries. "I burned the first batch," she admitted. "These are less dangerous." Daniel blinked. The Crimson Witch was offering him pastries. Rainwater dripped from her coat sleeves. For the first time, he noticed the exhaustion beneath her eyes. Not evil, not cruelty, just exhaustion. "You're from the Philippines," she said quietly. Daniel stiffened. "How did you know?" "I remember the flags." Silence filled the hallway. Then she smiled faintly. "You fought in Manila, didn't you?" Daniel's blood ran cold, because she remembered him too. Over the next few weeks, they slowly became neighbors, then acquaintances, then something stranger. Emily learned how to use streaming services. Daniel fixed the magical blackout problems surrounding her apartment. Sometimes they shared coffee on the rooftop during rainstorms, and every single conversation danced carefully around the war, until one night, the truth finally surfaced. The power went out across the building. Emergency lights painted the hallways red. Then Daniel heard screaming downstairs. Not human screaming, gate creature screaming. His instincts returned instantly, sword in hand, heartbeat racing. By the time he reached the lobby, the monster was already dead. Its body twitched across the floor, surrounded by crimson flames, and Emily stood in the center of the destruction, one hand glowing with ancient magic, the same terrifying power that once destroyed armies, the same magic Daniel spent years fearing. She looked at him slowly. "I was hoping," she whispered, "you'd never have to see this version of me again." The building alarms blared overhead. Tenants screamed upstairs. Daniel tightened his grip on the sword. Old memories screamed at him to attack, to finish the war. But then Emily spoke again, and her voice trembled. "I'm tired of killing." The flames around her flickered weakly, not like a conqueror, like someone barely holding themselves together. Daniel looked down at the monster corpse, then back at her. "You protected them." Emily laughed bitterly. "That doesn't erase what I've done." "No," Daniel admitted, "it doesn't." Silence. Rain crashed against the shattered lobby windows. Then slowly, Daniel lowered the sword, and for the first time in years, the Crimson Witch looked genuinely shocked. Weeks later, the rumors around apartment 404 changed. The old woman in 302 started leaving homemade soup outside Emily's door. The student in 501 stopped complaining about the glowing lights, and the landlord quietly ignored the claw marks occasionally appearing in the lobby walls, because strange things kept happening around apartment 404. But strangely enough, people felt safer. Meanwhile, Daniel and Emily continued sharing rooftop coffees during storms, two survivors from opposite sides of a dead war, the hero of Manila and the villainess of Perth. One evening, Daniel finally asked the question he'd buried for years. "Why did you move here?" Emily stared out across the city lights silently, then finally answered, "Because this was the only country where nobody would look at me like a weapon." Daniel looked at her carefully. And did it work? For the first time since they met, the villainess smiled genuinely. A little. Then somewhere far beyond the city skyline, thunder rolled. Not natural thunder, gate thunder. Both of them recognized the sound instantly, and deep beneath the city, something ancient began to wake up.